Hello, team. Welcome to a probably ill-advised live stream with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. For I can't even say my name. For ATP Geopolitics.
This is getting off to a bad start already, Jonathan.
With my good friend Jonathan Fink, basically one of the legends of the universe. I mean, it's a paltry universe, not the multiverse. I'm a legend of the multiverse. We all know this, but he's a legend of the universe. So it's great to have him on board with the co-stream. I presume this is going live with yours as well.
It certainly is. I've just checked, and it's with the audience. Nobody is watching at the moment, but hopefully that will change soon.
It's one of these last minute things. So I was just sitting down watching the end of a TV series in the UK called Code of Silence, which is very good. And just catching the end of that with my partner. She's like, right, we need to get to bed. You need an early night tonight. She said to me, you really need to get upstairs to bed tonight. And I was like, you do realize Jonathan thinks
you do.
Yeah. And I was like, Jonathan Fink has just asked me to do a live stream from ODESA. And like, I really shall I? I'm happy to come to bed. And she's like, oh, come on, do it then. So I was like,
we
okay.
can make it a quick one.
Permission.
I don't think we've got the stamina for a long one, have we, Jonathan? So it'll be a quick, short and punchy.
I don't know about you, mate, what you do in your own personal life, but I've got stamina. But so it's been.
I have an ulterior motive, Jonathan. I have an ulterior motive. The room next door has been on an endless shagathon in the hotel that I've been staying in. So this at least helps to drown that out.
Well, okay, thank goodness for small mercies. Well, we'll be here to be. You keep those noise cancelling headphones on, and we'll keep you safe. Look, mate, it has been and team out there, everyone out there, it's been an insane day. It's been a brilliant day for Ukraine in terms of the incredible news. Actually, it started well. Okay, let's go back to the beginning, Jonathan. So last night, there was a record-breaking attack on Ukraine with 472 drones sent into Ukraine. If I'm correct, 385 were shot down or taken out with electronic warfare. That left something like 87, if my math is correct, to have got through. So that's going to be interesting. In any other day, that would be the biggest news. That's an absolutely record-breaking set of drones sent into Ukraine a day before, or a day and a half before, negotiations are supposed to start in Istanbul between the nations, right? So
I mean, that part is perfectly predictable, right? Russians hitting and lashing out before or after making any kind of concession or being seen to make a concession. That bit is entirely predictable, unfortunately.
Yes, but what probably wasn't predictable, although actually you could think justifiably that that Ukraine would do something kind of poignant before negotiations as well, but who would have predicted the crazy shenanigans of actually should have been 5 air bases being attacked simultaneously in a mission that had been 1.5 years in the making, whereby you had these ship containers basically, that have been adapted to have these thin roof sections made of wood, where they had, all things told, 150 drones with 300 munitions in them over the 5 airfields. And the containers had solar panels on top, and I believe the roofs came off and the drones took off. They were, I'm not quite sure how long these containers have been left in place for. So trucks had driven up. Certainly one truck at least was there on the day, drove up on the day, because the driver was lynched by locals and was murdered. So he was strangled. And actually he had nothing to do with it. And I think it's a bit like the Kerch Bridge explosion, whereby they're using people to deliver stuff without knowing what's in the containers. Yes. Meet here at this point, you'll meet someone, blah, blah, blah. So they're waiting, or they've been in place for some time. I'm not quite sure. Yep. And then the drones take off. You use AI, sophisticated technology, to then go and hit these different air bases. One truck appears to have kind of blown up. Maybe something went wrong. The munitions blew up before being able to take off, and that was in at the Ukrainka air base. But 4 other air bases seem to have varying degrees of successful strikes on them, possibly with a number of definitely with a number of strategic bombers, but also potentially an A-50 at one of the air bases at the Ivanovo air base. And that would be really so really successful. Zelensky's got no cards. Oh, he's got a load of cards. Day for
this is 1/3.
Ukraine.
I mean, we need to point out this is 1/3 of Russia's strategic nuclear bomber fleet, one of the largest such arsenals in the world. This is extraordinary. I mean, this is unparalleled. I think in the history of warfare and irregular warfare. It's absolutely seismic.
Some people are saying, it's the best ever X, Y, or Z, mission, project, plan, most successful, most this, that, or the other. My thoughts are that it's exceptional. It's brilliant. Ukrainians have done an absolute wonder in achieving what they have. There's a slight shame for me in that it wasn't 100% successful. So I gather that one of the air bases wasn't fully hit, and maybe the Russians are claiming they repelled the attacks on 3 of the air bases, and there will be an element of truth in probably that. So they probably have mitigated some of the attacks on 3 of the air bases, which is why we're hearing less about Deglevo, less about Ivanovo, and nothing happened, I think, at Ukraine.
Surely operationally, you'd build in a failure rate. So this probably is not a huge surprise to the organizers of the operation.
Yeah, so and that happened. There's going to be interesting questions as to, one, what is Russia going to do in response? Interesting that Ukraine at the moment are sending quite a number of drones into Russia as we speak. I don't know what the Russians are doing into Ukraine, but there's certainly at least 150 drones flying into Russia. So the Ukrainians are keeping that pressure up. That's interesting. But the questions are, what is Russia going to do in response, kind of directly? What is Russia going to say tomorrow in Istanbul at the Istanbul 2.0 talks? And will they throw their toys out the pram? Will Putin react to this bombastically?
I've got an angle on this. I'll let you finish, but I've got an angle.
Well, no, I mean, so those are the kind of questions. What are the ramifications? And then the last question I'd say is, what is Trump's response going to be? Now, there are some theories that he could actually use this against Ukraine, as in, you're supposed to be doing peace talks, oh my goodness, you aren't really interested in peace because you've done all this, as if that's justifiable. But
the thing is, I mean, it's been totally overshadowed by what's happened. But yesterday, and I think it was yesterday, 2 rail bridges or 2 road bridges were blown up in a sabotage attack. Now this, to me at least, bears all the hallmarks of a Russian provocation, of a Russian setup, because Ukraine does not have a history of deliberately targeting civilian infrastructure, especially when it exactly coincides with some, high civilian casualties or likelihood of civilian casualties. There has been no instance that I can recall in 3 years where Ukraine has deliberately targeted civilians in this way. Both of these attacks seemed absolutely timed to cause the maximum impact and civilian casualties. To my mind, and this is pure speculation, it has to be said, but it does fit the pattern of Russian operations, and it surely is not coincidental that these 2 acts of so-called sabotage happened the day before the peace talks. It seems to me this is exactly the way Putin would operate. He does not want peace, but he does not want to lose face in the peace talks. So he would come and say, look at these dastardly Ukrainians. They don't really want peace. They're evil. They're slaughtering civilians. Can you blame us? Can you blame us for everything that we've done? That to me was his get out of jail free card. Well, if we're playing cards here, then Ukraine has laid down all the aces and absolutely blown that story away. I mean, it no longer, I think, provides the power of provocation and shock that Putin thought it might have.
I'm 50-50 about railway attacks, because there was a train that was also attacked in occupied Ukraine in the south by Melitopol, which was
so the three,
almost
the three,
yeah, almost 100%. That was, well, actually there was technically 4, because there was another place attacked in Bryansk, 2 in Bryansk. One was, I think, a bridge again attacked with a railway measuring train. It didn't get affected, but I think it just gone over. Then there was another one in Bryansk, and this one in Kursk. Now, I marginally think it's more likely that the Ukrainians did them all. If you believe, so about a week and a half ago, or a week ago, or I can't remember exactly when.
Are you saying then that would be accidental, that each of them was timed to cause quite significant civilian casualties?
I would say the Ukrainians. So okay, so to
does not fit their
flesh
MO.
out, so they wouldn't have been trying to take out civilian casualties. So what happened is a vehicle went over the top of the bridge. It then collapsed either through poor maintenance, red flag, or the Ukrainians did it. And then a civilian train went into the rubble that was, caused. Is it Hanlon's razor? Don't put down to malice what can be better to be explained by incompetence. In other words,
unless you're dealing with Russia. Unless
well,
you're dealing with Russia, in which case malice is the go-to.
Yeah, but as in the malice on the Ukrainian side. So,
yes.
Or as in, like, yes, I agree, they would definitely not have intended to take out a Russian civilian train, but that doesn't mean that that wasn't what happened. Now, there is this idea. I say idea because it kind of, so a week or so ago, there was this report that very deep, right next to this area where the bridge was blown up, Vygonichi, I think it is, in Kursk region, quite near to Kursk city, which is really deep into Kursk. There was a claim that there was a deep reconnaissance group or a sabotage group of Ukrainians that were in that exact area, and there were all these not emergency services, I think, like reactions from Russian troops in the area and forces, and it was all very controversial, and it was all bit sort of semi hush hush, and no one knew quite what was going on and what the hell were Ukrainians doing so deep into Kursk. And then it kind of like, we didn't hear anything about that. And then a week or so later, a bridge right near where the Ukrainian saboteurs were supposed to have been blows up, and then the train crashes, and that's one of the incidents. So either the Russians were lying about that sabotage group initially, and it was all part of a very contrived false flag operation, which is perfectly plausible, or the Ukrainians really had got that far, but that's a really risky depth that they got to in order to then set the explosives at that, because you would expect it to be like partisans who are Russians or something like that doing that so deep into Russia. So, there are so many contingencies and variables going on here, but I still think it's just about more probable that the Ukrainians did all this and didn't intend on a civilian train being hit in that.
I mean, the most conspiratorial option, of course, and again, zero evidence whatsoever for this, is that they blow the bridge, Russian authorities become aware, and let a train drive into it so they could manipulate the situation. Now, that is extraordinarily improbable. But again, if we're thinking with the sort of GRU FSB mindset, then you have to dial the, put the dial up to maximum paranoia. That's the place I come from whenever considering anything that Russians may have a hand in. They're certainly not averse to sacrificing huge numbers, not just of their own military population, but their own civilian population for perceived political benefit. I'm not saying that's what happened in this instance, but they're entirely capable of doing that.
But the thing is, it's really difficult to kind of judge probabilities here, because you're quite right, is they've got form for this. So the 1999 apartment bombings that set off,
that's exactly what I have in mind.
That set off was it the second Chechen war, the first I can't remember now, but anyway, the apartment bombings,
second Chechen war,
the second Chechen war, that the FSB, as we pretty much know, did. I mean, that was an outrageous red flag. Blow up your own population, blow up your own civilian buildings so that you can attack the Chechens, right? the Russians have done this before. So you're absolutely right. All of the options are on the table, and there is not just a non-zero probability of any of these options, but actually pretty significant probability of all of these options being having happened. So I don't know, but I just think that it would make sense if the Ukraine, it would make sense if the Russians did this, like you said. Also makes sense that the Ukrainians might have done this as all part of today's activities. A lot of train sabotage and targeting, along with 5 air bases and possibly 6, because there were rumors, there were claims that an airbase in, although it wasn't part of the plan, that Malyuk, the guy, that the SBU guy that was in charge of this operation, had that pre-prepared schematic where he was showing the different bases. There are claims that a base within Moscow was also targeted today as well, so it could have been 6 bases. And there are some people claiming that a sub base was targeted in Severomorsk, up near Olenia Air Base in Murmansk region. But
so I'm laughing because I've been there.
Right. Well, so a lot of people are
been-
saying to me,
I've
yeah,
been
and the
there.
sub base and the sub base. But in one of my videos, I did point out that at least one OSINT source had done some geolocation, and actually the explosion that was supposed to be at the sub base was actually of Olenia, but from a different direction. And they did a geolocation of where that was being taken from, that footage. And so actually that wasn't a sub base, but loads of people were reporting it was a sub base. So that all happened today.
And of course, Severomorsk is a spread out. It's a spread out series of bases and high rises. It was actually Severomorsk 3, which I went to, which was Severomorsk 3. And that was predominantly, I believe, at least from what we saw, a missile and a strategic sort of bomber base rather than a submarine base. So Murmansk and maybe Severomorsk 1 possibly is the submarine silos there, but they have a lot of gear up there, and I say multiple settlements with different military focuses. People at the channel may well be wondering what the hell I was doing in Severomorsk 3. There's a story there, but today is not the day to tell it.
So on top of all that, we have some political news to report on. I did a breaking news update a couple of hours ago after the exit polls came out from the second round of the Polish presidential election. This is really important because the Polish president has some power in Poland. They can veto what the government is doing. So the government is a coalition government, a minority government under Donald Tusk, pro-EU, very pro-Ukraine, a very Western-looking government, but they've been stymied by Andrzej Duda, who is a Law and Justice Party president that is on the right rather than the centrist government that's in power. And although he's pro-Ukraine, he is very right-wing populist and otherwise not aligned with the EU. Now you've got this second round of the Polish presidential elections where you've got Trzaskowski against Nawrocki. Nawrocki is this right-wing anti-Ukraine populist who is supported by the Law and Justice Party, even though Law and Justice Party are broadly pro-Ukraine. This started off as an independent, is not pro-Ukraine, and he's taken a lot of support from anti-Ukraine people on the far right. Now, I reported a couple of hours ago that the early exit polls were, 2 exit polls were in favor of the centrist mayor of Warsaw. And he then even announced that he had won type thing, but it was very early and it was within the margin of error. Now, a twist in this, and I did say there were loads of caveats, is that the latest exit poll, has now seen a massive swing in Nawrocki's direction, and he's massively anti-EU, and he is also anti-Ukraine. And he has stated that if these, so PIS, the Law and Justice, has stated that if these polls hold, as in the latest one, and Karol Nawrocki becomes president-elect tomorrow morning, I can reassure you that maybe not starting tomorrow, but from Tuesday, we will begin very energetic work in order to give the Polish people another gift, the end of Tusk's government. In other words, like if this goes the other way, the way I personally definitely don't want it to go, and Nawrocki as a right-wing populist wins, then that is Poland in all sorts of trouble, and that is European unity in all sorts of trouble, and that is Ukraine support for Ukraine from Poland in all sorts of trouble. So the latest from that is bad news when I reported it initially as good news, because the early exit polls were good for Trzaskowski. Anyway, there you go.
That's not great. And of course, we know that there's a near miss in Romania, where very nearly a sort of similar anti-Ukraine populist with, it has to be said, sort of massive digital manipulation behind him took place. I have no information, of course, at this point about whether there are similar traces of large-scale late manipulation through digital sources, but that's definitely one to look out for, because Russia is not just fighting a kinetic war in Ukraine, they're fighting a massive cyber informational hybrid war against Western democracies. And we need to be, I think, very cognizant of the hallmarks of that, and where significant manipulation has taken place of electoral processes. We should be doing what Romania did: declare them null and void, provide evidence to that, and then rerun processes almost immediately, but under circumstances where that digital manipulation cannot come into play. It's a difficult thing to do. It's a difficult kind of ask. But unless we take the digital manipulation of our media sphere seriously, we are going to see extraordinarily unstable and disruptive politics throughout Europe. We have our own version of that in Reform. Those parties that simplify complex issues, run on populist tickets, have a sort of incipient racist undertones to their campaigning and policies, offer simplistic solutions to complex problems, and ultimately what unites them all seems to be massive injections of digital support, highly, extremely targeted, using sophisticated software to sort of parse the demographics and behaviors, often done in a way that will break the legal framework of elections. And in the case of the UK, almost certainly these investments will be done way beyond the mandated amounts that could be spent on that kind of advertising. Of course, they don't declare the sources, and they break those laws with impunity. No, we're way behind on this, and it's incredibly destabilizing, and will only get worse, is my view.
Yeah, it is worrying, definitely, because so much is on the line here. When you've got Trump's America, you've got Kristi Noem. In my breaking news update, I showed a video clip of Kristi Noem at CPAC, so the Conservative Political Action Conference in Poland, the one that's being held in Poland recently. Kristi Noem, the Secretary for the Department of Homeland Security, an A-lister coming to Poland and advocating for Karol Nawrocki. So we've got the Americans getting involved in the German election, in the Romanian election, and in the Polish election, and in the Canadian election and the Australian election, on behalf of the right-wing populists here. And I'm not trying to be all liberal lefty. Actually, I am these days trying to advocate for sensible centrism and status quo in Europe particularly, but actually around the world, for stability and security. Like, if you go to the extremes at the moment, this is not good for Ukraine. It's not good for international security. And so far, there's been a repudiation of that MAGA Trumpism as they've tried to export it internationally to all those aforementioned countries. But it looks like Poland is on a knife edge. And I'm deeply worried, because Poland have become a really central player in European politics. They have become a success story for the EU, which is kind of really freaking annoying that you have an anti-EU person saying, well, let's burn this all down, when it's like Poland are riding on the wave of EU membership to the point of being an absolute success story of the EU. The economy has boomed. because of the EU, and you want to burn it all down, seriously. So that's really frustrating, but that affects international security, and it affects support for Ukraine and the unity in Europe to continue that support. It's really like there's a lot on the line here.
There is, and Poland's a curious place because when you drive through Poland, the evidence, and I went to Poland the first time in, it was 1990, 1991, yeah. And the evidence of what the transformation that's taken place materially, physically, not just in infrastructure, but how people live, the quality of life. The period between sort of 1990 and the present, it's an extraordinary generation of wealth, extraordinary generation of the stability underpinned by rule of law that had allowed people to run businesses and transform their country and economy. To then turn around and say the EU is a destructive force flies in the face of the physical reality that you can see in Poland. And driving
Same
through
with Romania.
Ukraine, yeah, same with Romania. I haven't been to Romania, but I can imagine that driving through eastern Ukraine with a bunch of Polish guys, they look at it and they go, yeah, this is what Poland was like in my youth. This is what it was like when I was younger. And now it is, night and day different. The scary bit is the way that reality is manipulated to such a point where people who are less clear-eyed, less honest with themselves, who lived through that period, will subscribe to that point of view, even though their lived reality is completely different. That's the terrifying bit, is the manipulation of reality based on, dare I say it, sort of self-interested or cult-like thinking. And unfortunately, the digital medium and the algorithms and the tech giants that have come about are experts in hacking people's brains. And to do that, they're quite happy to hack reality and to be enablers for people who profit from hacking reality. It's a terrifying phenomenon, coming from the sphere of marketing, where my job was to actually participate in some way in that hacking of algorithms, the hacking of people's brains. I know that it's already been going on for a long time. This experiment is now 15, 20 years old. No, it's more than that. It's 20, 25 years old. And AI was already playing a role a lot earlier than most people think. And of course, it was pretty crude. But already 15 years ago, relatively sophisticated, sort of maybe sub-AI, but the sort of proto-AI algorithms were already doing extraordinary things long before ChatGPT and so on. So you can imagine now, with the power that is coming to these things, and with the prospect of quantum computing, the technological change, the capability change is absolutely terrible. Our cultural change, our cultural sophistication has not advanced, but in fact seems to be going backwards.
Yeah, it's certainly a lot to be concerned by. Just to give you the latest from Russia, Lipetsk, Ryazan, Borisovsk, there are several air bases that are being targeted by the Ukrainians. So drones are very, very active inside Russia. So that is happening. We're hearing that the owners of the warehouse, so there's the theory proposed, actually, I think, by Russians, that a warehouse in Chelyabinsk in Russia it was where they were putting the drones together and I presume the containers together to then send out to eventually result in the air bases being attacked today. That the owners of the warehouse in Chelyabinsk have been detained. So there's some pushback happening there. No, I think news on the Polish election, but I'll keep you informed. Interesting question here from one of you. Where was it? Can you address, Cheryl says, can you address the ethics of the out of it Russian soldier buzzed and then hit by a drone? I don't know if people have seen this, but there is a Russian soldier that's basically sitting in a field, as far as I understand it, and he is not altogether with it, or he's just sitting completely demurred, like there are some theories that, or not theories, we have seen when drones have attacked people, all sorts of different reactions have taken place. So Russians have been, running away. Quite often they run in the same direction, which is ridiculous, keeping together. What they should do, if there's one drone in the air and there's 3 soldiers, they should all run in different directions. And that means at least only one of them will be hit. But so many times we've seen them all run together and they all get hit. Then you get people trying to throw stuff at the drones, trying to hit the drones, shoot the drones, all sorts of different reactions. Then we've seen a bunch of videos where they've stood still and not done anything. And this has been some kind of theory, a bit like, fight or flight or freeze, something like that. I don't know, but there have been a number of videos where they just stop dead in their tracks, as if like the drone won't see them and they still get hit. And we've got this.
I saw that one. That was weird. Yeah.
The soldier just sitting down, and then the drone kind of circles a bit and then goes and takes them out. Loads of people, predominantly pro-Russian people, have been saying that this is an example of a war crime. But the guy, as far as I understand,
a war crime. That's absolutely absurd. If he showed a white flag, if he surrendered his weapon, showed a white flag, and was demonstrably had shown that he no longer wanted to take part in the combat, then it would be a war crime potentially. It depends how it's done. For a combatant to be killed, this is madness. I'm not sure we should even really give this oxygen, because if you have come to another person's land to steal their land, defile their houses, steal their possessions, destroy their possessions, kill and rape their children, and you are an enemy combatant in the field, it does not matter what you are physically doing. Unless you have demonstrably surrendered to the alternative forces, you are an enemy combatant. And in this case, you are part of a raping, pillaging rabble army who has committed untold horrific crimes. And frankly, fuck them. Fuck them all.
How many, this is relevant for both sides here, but how many strikes on troop accumulations have there been where troops have been asleep, billeted at night, or watching TV in their barracks, or sitting having a cup of tea or whatever, and a drone or missile destroys them, blows them up, just sitting, not even aware? All the different combinations of what soldiers are doing. Some maybe sitting on a crapper, going to the toilet, right? Some reading a book, some fighting, some doing horrific things, some doing non-horrific things, some doing completely benign things. You've got the whole range of what soldiers do. They are soldiers fighting in a war. They are viable targets. Doesn't matter whether they're sitting in a field or driving a tank.
There's literally no question whatsoever. The only nuance comes, of course, to my mind, is the question of why don't those Russians surrender? That is quite an interesting question to ask, and the Fatniks would not ask that one. But of course, the answers could be quite nuanced. First of all, they will not surrender because, one, they will be shot by their own side. And I was speaking to someone today who has seen hundreds of hours of footage of this happening. Russians literally killing their own wounded soldiers.
I've seen too many of these, yeah.
There's many of these. They kill their own wounded soldiers because they literally don't care and they don't want the burden. They kill Ukrainian prisoners of war, which is a war crime. If their own troops retreat even a millimeter, they can get killed by their commanders. If their own troops refuse to follow orders or even don't look like they're really up to the fight, they will be killed and tortured by their own commanders. So that's one reason why these people may not surrender. The other one is simply they're also imbued with the idea that they don't want to fall into Ukrainian hands. Maybe it's because they despise Ukrainians. Maybe it's because they've had propagandistic narratives pumped into their heads that they'll be ill-treated. Of course, it's extraordinary that they think they'll be more ill-treated by Ukrainians than their own side, but that unfortunately is how this sort of propaganda works. Another thought in their heads, of course, is that if they surrender, their families will not get not only the money from their deaths, they will not get the salaries that they are due either. So there may be multiple reasons why people do not surrender? That, I think, is a more pertinent question. If they're a competent in the field and are not surrendered, I'm sorry, it's what are we even talking about?
Yeah, and so lots of theories about what this guy was trying to do, but what he didn't do is surrender. And you know, it becomes a war crime if you surrender. Now we have video footage of at least 150 uh, Russian, examples of uh, Russians murdering POWs, Ukrainian POWs. Right, that is a war crime. These people have surrendered, hands behind their heads, lying on the ground, etc., etc. Then they are shot by Russians. That is murder, and there's plenty of examples of that. This is a guy sitting down and clearly who knows what is going through his mind, but he is not surrendering, and therefore he is a soldier, and in the Russian army, and he is a viable military target, and it's as simple as that. It's not nice, but then war is not nice, right? As
It's
you
not
said,
nice.
Jonathan,
Yeah.
these people have invaded Ukraine. Ukraine is defending themselves against people like that. Now, if the drone goes, oh, poor guy sitting on his ass not doing anything, and then flies away, and then this guy goes, brilliant, I got away with that, and then goes and shoots some Ukrainian civilians or soldiers or whatever, then that is an opportunity cost that is
Yeah.
unjustifiable.
He may be on drugs, he may be mentally ill, he may be shell shocked. All of these things are, well, actually high probabilities, because we know there's a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol actually in the Russian ranks. We know that the incidence of mental illness must be just off the charts. The Ukrainian army is not the freaking social services. They're there to defend their cities, their women, their children, their culture from annihilation. So I'm sorry. It's terrible and it's horrific, but it's not even a conversation.
Yeah, and so yeah, the I guess TLDR is that's completely justifiable in the context of a war. It's
Yeah,
not a war crime. It's clearly not a war crime. And the people who are trying to spit the dummy about this
yeah,
are Russians who are happy to ignore the actual war crimes
yeah.
of Russian missiles winging their way into apartment blocks and Russian bullets killing POWs who have
Yeah.
fully surrendered against the international understand, the international law concerning war.
And let's trigger the trolls here a little bit, because here in Odessa and actually in Lviv a few weeks ago, um, and this happens on a regular weekly basis in every major city of Ukraine, um, major convoys of vehicles with banners, sirens going, flags, people deeply passionate, deeply incensed, deeply angry about the treatment of Azov fighters. Now, there have been many, many prisoner exchanges. Not a single one of them has involved an Azov soldier. One, because Azov is still used by the Russians to spin the whole Nazis narrative, even though that battalion was reformed a long time ago to become one of the most effective fighting units in Ukraine. That's the reason, one of the reasons why Russia will not let them go, and they will not let, unfortunately, I think any of the Azov fighters um, survive this. We also know that Azov fighters were kept in a barracks, which Russia then bombed as a provocation, slaughtering prisoners of war en masse, um, rather than hand them over, which they were being pressured to do. Um, and Ukrainians know what they're fighting against. And those prisoners who are released, as I say, none from Azov have been released, but those who are released from other units come back emaciated. They're not all tortured in the same way and to the same extent. There's a certain
95%
amount
have
of
been found to have been tortured.
They've all been
95%.
tortured, yeah. Some are more severe than others, and there's a certain amount of capriciousness and, I would say, bad luck. It just depends on what commanders you get. But torture is systemic. Whether that torture is long-term disabling physically and psychologically, unfortunately, is a matter of pure luck. But hearing the stories as I have this week, I didn't go on a tour either, but there was a tour where people were taken to meet prisoners who were just released. Obviously, they couldn't record anything, no interviews. The stories are frankly beyond horrific. Beyond horrific. Russians, I've not heard of a single instance where Russians are treated in anything that even approaches even the mildest stories that are told about how Ukraine's treated by Russians. So we're not dealing with a sort of moral relativism here. It's not just that war is bad and everything is bad and everything is grim. Ukrainians, by and large, from what I can tell, of course, there will be instances of individuals losing control, getting anger, and there will be bad individuals in every army. But systemically, Ukraine is upholding its values and upholding the principles of modern warfare that have evolved over the last couple of hundred years. Russia is not observing a single one of them. In fact, it is systemically using murder and torture as a strategy of war.
Can I just take what you're saying at the moment, which is an insanely serious subject, and go to what is otherwise a very serious subject, and then take it to a puerile level? So this is probably deeply inappropriate given the subject matter that you were talking about, but this is genuinely supposedly what's going on at the moment in Russia, like right now. This is a live or almost live real map of the drone strike trajectories in Russia. Now, I don't know if someone's having a laugh or whether the drone pilots are manipulating the drones to do. When people go for runs or cycle rides, and you can make pictures you can have these trackers that you wear,
Yes.
and people make pictures of things when they do these cycle rides, and they do the very contrived cycle ride, and they come out with this, like, make a statement about something or a silly picture about something. This is the latest drone strike picture of what's going on in Russia. So this is a long intro to this. Now, I'm sorry to say, but that is masterful. That's a real live map of Ukrainian drones over Russia right now. Literally, that is the drone
This
map.
real. This isn't a meme or something. This is real.
What is going around on several accounts at the moment. And this is the kind of map. This is the typical map. I don't know if someone's having a laugh or whether
boy. Where's Moscow in this?
It's absolutely
Which
brilliant.
direction is Moscow? Is
That's
Moscow in the line of fire,
that's
as they say?
Yaroslavl. So Moscow is there. So Moscow gets a couple of pubic hairs, but other than that, it's Nizhny Novgorod is getting well and truly shafted at the moment.
Which one's getting the full payload?
Nizhny Novgorod. It's it's taking one for the team. So anyway, that is apparently what's going on. I can neither confirm nor deny the aforementioned penal.
It's interesting.
Penal's the wrong word, but anyway, carry on.
So someone's having a jolly time with that for sure. What's interesting, of course, is the activists, the pro-Ukraine activists, have gone absolutely wild. The memes are flying. It's absolute jubilation. Here in Ukraine, people are having their normal, Sunday night good time. I asked a bunch of people, in taxis, restaurants, etc., whether they're aware of the news. They were not. They're working. They're busy. They're living their lives, completely oblivious and unaware of what is taking place, that we in our Ukrainian bubble are getting awfully excited about. And of course, I've talked to a bunch of military guys, Western and Ukrainian today as well. And they're discussing this in the terms of, well, what do you think of this? Is this good? Is it bad? Is it, was it well executed? You don't get that sense of absolute jubilation. They know it's important. They know it's fantastic. But there's a far more, it's not even muted, but I think when you see things every day, and they're far more aware of a lot of other Ukraine's victories, it has to be said. They remember Moskva. They remember so many of Ukraine's triumphs, which barely got covered in Western media. I think they see this as a fantastic thing, but it's in the context of many, many other good things and bad things that have happened here, things that were well executed and things that were poorly executed. So it's kind of interesting to see that it's not, people aren't dancing in the streets, driving around honking their horns. Well, they certainly aren't now because it's curfew now, so they'd get into some trouble if they did that.
I love the idea that, Trump saying to Zelensky in the White House, "You don't have the cards. You don't have the cards," and he's like, "Yeah, I've got a couple of cards, just a couple of
A
cards, a
full
few."
deck of cards, full deck. Could you tell Jonathan the story as well? The bit that really, I think, that people really liked here, and this is the fine nuance, is that the AI, the autonomous systems in these drones, were
Mm,
trained on one of the strategic bombers that wasn't broken up under
yeah.
the Budapest Memorandum, but ended up in a museum.
Well, oh, right. Give me some details on that.
So, this is it's just a lovely, extraordinary detail. Let me get that story up. So, it was a Tu-95 strategic nuclear bomber. Now, Ukraine had a small fleet of these, of course, but as part of the Budapest Memorandum, they were all
Yes.
chopped up and the munitions, either destroyed or handed back to Russia. In this instance, in order to destroy live real Russian Tu-95s, Ukraine went to Poltava, where there's a sort of aerospace museum where the only Tu-95 was kept by Ukraine and preserved as a museum piece. They then used that museum piece to train the autonomous AIs that were
Right.
used in
Yeah.
this attack. It's just it's a beautiful kind of
That's
irony.
brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, really, really good. And it's going to be fascinating to see what the actual battle damage assessment coming out of that is. Thank you, Rosalind Miller. Have a drink for me. I've drunk too much tonight and I shouldn't be doing this. So I'm just taking it easy now with a white port for the end of the
I'm
night.
back on the
Well,
Diet Coke because I met a charming editor of a Ukrainian newspaper at lunchtime who very partial to Guinness. So we had several pints for lunch or late breakfast, and then wine throughout the afternoon, and then beers in the evening. So I probably shouldn't have done this, but yeah.
yeah, and yet here we are. So thank you very much to Kevin Force for some awesome support. Always here, always supporting. Thanks, mate. Appreciate that. Tremors from Australia says, genuine question, because you guys research this every day. What's Russia's ability to replace even a tenth of these aircraft independently, assuming sanctions are kept by all?
I
Essentially
think it's
zero. Yeah.
zero. Yeah.
Well, so the question is, what fleet do they have? So the first question, how many of these planes do they have? Whether they're the Tu-160, Tu-95, Tu-22, how many of them do they have on paper? Then how many are operational? And then if you blow a bunch of them up, how many of the non-operational ones can they scrabble together
Yeah.
to get them operational? And that's a bit of an unknown. Like, I assume they've been kind of butchering, cannibalizing planes anyway to keep the fleet going, especially.
1992, someone's written here. I mean, I very much doubt whether the production line for certainly the complex parts is there, but also if one of their early warning aircraft was hit, I would imagine it's absolutely impossible to replace those. Then there's the cost angle. Russia has a serious budget deficit. They can carry on, maybe patching pieces of tanks together and sending them out, BMPs and stuff. But these complex equipment, you can't sub it with Chinese parts and stuff. It's got to be a zero chance of building this fleet back up again.
Yeah, so I was saying this in my I did an assessment of this, and by the way, Tremors, if you haven't seen, I've done quite a few videos today. So I did the live stream breaking news update, and then I re-uploaded that as a what was effectively a pre-recorded same video, and then I did a breaking news update that was a latest on the strikes on this whole mission. And I did talk about this. So at the end of it, I was talking about the cost of these airplanes, and the cost is kind of irrelevant. So it's a paper cost in peacetime. So if you're going to say, well, this plane cost $1 million to manufacture, and so that, you know, people have totted up the value of these strikes and say, oh look, that's $2 billion worth of planes taken out, or some are saying, well, actually, if this amount of planes have been hit, then it's $3 to $4 billion or whatever. But actually it's not really, because we're not in peacetime. They can't rebuild those planes, they can't get the parts, and so on and so forth. So the value of these planes is in their function and what they do. And if they can't do them, you can't quantify the money here. It's like they can't drop those bombs, or the A-50 can't do its radar job, then that is a functional deficit that the Russians are going to be faced with that cannot be replaced. So I think that A, they're not producing these. B, it's unlikely that they're going to be able to scrabble too many of these back together again. So this is a really significant degradation of their capabilities. And actually the A-50, I think if that was hit in Ivanovo, which is a claim, then that's a really significant strike. A couple of those A-50s were taken out down near the south of Donetsk, near the Black Sea, the Sea of Azov. I can't remember when it was, a year ago or so, and that was huge. Like, losing 2 of those planes was massive. To lose another A-50 is a real hit on their capability. And so it's not so much the monetary cost, but it's the functional cost, because there is no money in the world really that can replace these as it stands, all things remaining equal. And that's the key. They aren't producing them, certainly from scratch. So
that's someone made a good point here. He said that some of the planes hit had the tires on the wings, and they kind of only bothered to do that with the operational ones. Maybe that's the speculation there anyway. Although I don't know how tires are supposed to protect these planes from drones. I'm not sure what the theory is there.
Absolutely. You can see a couple of them there. That's after that's already been struck. So yeah, that is there are some memes as well hanging around. That's the vehicle that was supposed to release the drones, I think, for the 5th airbase that didn't quite get there, and it ended up sort of blowing up on what have you. You then get these memes that are going around to do with the tires on the wings that you were talking about. Sorry to flick through all of this, all of these threads. I'm just trying to find. I know it's here because I've just seen it. You can see all these train bridges going up and stuff. There is a meme. I know you're here, you bastard. There it is. There's your tires. So plenty of that going around. Thank you very much to the Weasel. Really appreciate that super sticker. Thank you to Lynn from Arizona. Surprised it's us. Really appreciate your support. You're such an amazing member of the team. And Richard Bennett, as ever, legend in his underwear. As we say, I don't know why we say that. Crawford Fulton King, thanks, dude. Really appreciate you. Good to have you here. If Russia wants to talk about war crimes, they should not sign up with the Geneva Convention. I may be wrong, but didn't they sign up to the treaties? I mean, Russia are just full of contradictions and double standards.
Treaties. How many treaties have they broken in the invasion of Ukraine? And I think we didn't cover this, but last week there was the announcement by some Russian diplomatic clown that actually the Soviet Union never technically ceased to exist. Therefore, Ukraine is not an independent. And there are dozens of treaties signed by Russia itself that recognize the sovereign borders of Ukraine post 1991. Whatever Russia signs has about the same value as toilet paper, right? So they go wipe their asses with it because it really means diddly freaking squat.
Michael Clark on Sky News, one of the analysts there on the Ukraine war. I like Michael Clark. He was saying he totted up 190 treaties over, I don't know how many decades, that the Russians have broken. So, there you go. Good news that there seems to be more activity going on. I mean, I don't know. This is not a normal source I refer to, but Moscow region, a factory making rockets. I don't know if that's happened just now. So all the usual caveats apply. That could be old footage. But there is certainly activity taking place Yeah, he's another one, Astrai Intel, which is slightly better actually.
Oh, yeah.
At least I know them. So
When you get
yeah,
multiple accounts, it's maybe is more valid, but
yeah,
mistakes have been made. Sometimes people have, recast old stories, but that
yes.
does look spectacular.
I don't recognise that footage. The city's foremost ICBM, so intercontinental ballistic missile manufacturing plant, was reduced to atoms. So things are happening. Ukraine. I was hoping this would happen, which would be that Ukraine didn't just end it there, but then actually had a very active night overnight, and it seems like that is happening.
It's a Christmas-esque grunge thing because you're getting all your presents all at once.
It,
Um,
it's looking pretty good, isn't it?
I've got
Massive
a
thank.
question for you. Oh, sorry. Do
Yes.
thank you. That's
Just
a massive thank
just
you.
John Panciotti, who is always so insanely generous, so really, really kind. Puerto Rico, I believe, or is it Costa Rica? I always ask you this question, John, and then you answer me, and I put it in my brain, and then between videos, I forget. I'm now
You've got
thinking
to forgive Jonathan. He's
it's Costa
insanely
Rica.
old,
It is
despite his
Costa Rica.
appearance.
It is not Puerto Rico. Screw you, Fig. Screw you. Thank you, John. You are an amazingly generous person. And thank you, BME. A little something to go towards the next bottle of Ukrainian wine, JP. Very, very kind. I am getting through them. That is true. I haven't, in fact, I had some Ukrainian white wine. That's why I'm a little bit worse for wear at the moment. I finished off the bottle of Ukrainian white wine, and yeah, it's all gone south from there.
I had a fabulous steak and chips. Apparently, Odessa is the culinary capital of Ukraine, which I didn't know.
Is it
And they
really?
take a huge pride in their food here. They absolutely do. And as you know, Ukrainian food is already
Good.
fabulous,
Yeah, I
in
enjoyed
Lviv and
myself.
Kyiv. But here it's another level, apparently. So
Happy days. Well, you're going to have to tell us exactly what you're doing over there in a second after we say Tremors. Thank you very much, dude. I haven't seen any of your other videos come on just in time to catch the stream. So thanks for answering. Sorry if I made you repeat yourself. Dude, mate, I am king of repeating myself. Like, there's not a problem there. If you want me to repeat myself, I will. I'll even repeat myself about repeating myself, which I'm doing presently.
yeah.
And the longer I keep this thread going, I'll repeat myself again. So thanks, Tremors.
Jonathan's going to rename his channel Goldfish Politics.
Yes, this is. I mean, I struggle with my MS brain anyway, with short-term memory loss. So, yeah, it's a surprise I've been able to keep this
You've
train of thought
turned that
going
around, haven't
for
you?
3
You've made it
years.
look like I made a disableist joke there. You've turned me into an abuser right there. Oh,
Dude,
sneakiness.
everyone knows you're a complete bastard. Like people see your videos, right? They watch you. Everyone knows you, Jonathan. You like,
Transparent,
yeah,
yeah.
this is you. Like, pick on the cripple. Yeah, thanks, mate. Thanks. Anyway, what are you doing in Odessa?
What am I doing? Yes, I am actually here. Fortunately, nobody I know watches this. But there was a rather good conference called the Black Sea Security Forum, run
Yes,
by
very
Mr.
highfalutin.
Alexei Honcharenko and sponsored by Lord Ashcroft. Lord Ashcroft is a remarkable gentleman, not my brand of politics, but he has been to Ukraine many dozens of times and takes keen interest in what's going on here, as well as I absolutely don't care who's on what angle of politics if they are desperately concerned about Britain's ability to defend itself and Europe. I'm on the coke again. Someone says, yeah, if they are concerned with Britain's defense and if they're concerned with, giving Russia the appropriate level of threat, then I'm all for it. I don't care their political persuasion on Ukraine and defense issues. And it seems like what Lord Ashcroft is doing is extraordinary, especially given that I think must be in his late 70s. It's extraordinary to do what he's doing here and come out many dozens of times. And build the kind of networks and influence and gather the information he does, and then bring that back to the inner circle of British politics. But I've met some wonderful people here. I've met lots of extraordinary Ukrainian ambassadors and people who, not quite foreign ministers, but sort of have been deputy foreign ministers and so on. Lots of fabulous political commentators, some really brilliant UK MPs, and some people who may not come on the channel but may turn out to be extremely influential. So one of the big things I'm going to be doing when I come back is to continue the advocacy for handing over, well, first of all, extending the freeze on Russian central bank assets, the sort of $300 billion that are stored in various jurisdictions, although most of it's in, the biggest chunk is in Belgium under the jurisdiction of Euroclear.
Euroclear, yeah.
Making sure that is carried over in terms of the freeze and ideally handed over to Ukraine as soon as possible. This really is a pivot point. And with Trump apparently blocking the lowering of the oil price cap, which people should, we'll do a separate episode on this, people should absolutely ignore what Trump says and look at what he does. By blocking the Europeans who want to lower the price cap to $45, which would absolutely screw Putin's economy and war machine, Trump is performing the #1 service by a long way that he could perform for his master in the Kremlin, and that is to keep the money flowing at the $60 rate into the Kremlin's coffers. So yes, look at what he does, not what he says. But Europe is in many ways equally weak, and on the central bank assets, if these were to cede back to Russia, we would essentially be putting a noose around our own necks. The trouble is, at the moment, it's been left to the Treasury and the bean counters and pen pushers. Apologies to anyone who fits that description. In fact, sorry, not apologies to any of you. The Treasury should not be given jurisdiction over this. This is a matter of significant national security, and I'm going to be doing a bunch of advocacy, including in Parliament, with various people I've met out here, to try and move that forward in a lot more robust fashion.
Someone, sorry, this is not at all what you're just talking about, and apologies.
It was very boring what I was talking about there, but important but dull.
Well, so somebody asked me a question, and I go off on one, and I have answered this already in this video, and I did talk about this in my breaking news update video. But there were all sorts of claims to do with Severomorsk. We talked about this at the beginning of the video. You mentioned you've been there before. Mm-hmm. These are the claims that, this video, that you see a big black smoke cloud behind a building. Ukrainians are claiming that they're destroying the submarine base at Severomorsk, and so on and so forth. Now, lots of people have claimed this, but only one source, which is usually pretty good, Tord Iverson, says the footage many claim to be from Severomorsk is actually from Olengorsk, which is Olenya Air Base, taken from the flats in Vysoky towards the airbase. Thus, the statements made by Zato Severomorsk, so that is that the Russians at the submarine base claim, the officials there claim that everything was quiet. And people are like, well, but you got all this footage of the submarine base being hit, but actually it's supposedly the airbase just from a different direction, and we have someone doing a geolocation of this, showing that actually it is looking at the airbase from a different angle. So what about the submarines being attacked as well? Loads of people keep asking about this on my videos. Everyone's like, yeah, you've got to mention submarine, but I did mention that actually submarine wasn't hit, or the submarine base wasn't hit. So I don't know whether that's definitely true, that geolocation, but there have been geolocations to suggest that Severomorsk was not hit, and it was Olenya Air Base that was caught in those in that video footage. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I know we covered that already, but we'll do it again.
I'm looking at the map because it was exceeding a long time ago since I was there, and I was at a place called Severomorsk 3, which I assume is not the core town, but may not even be on a map. I'm looking on Google Maps, but thinking, yeah, it may not even be on Google Maps. But yes, it does look like in Severomorsk, it does have sea access, well, for part of the year when it's not iced up. And it has got, submarine bases. there, which of course in that part of the world is the nuclear, not just the nuclear submarines, but the nuclear icebreakers are stationed, I think, in that part of the world, because obviously the ice comes early and stays for big parts of the year, and of course the Arctic is extraordinarily strategically important for Russia. So it's significant to threaten somewhere like that. Of such strategic importance to Russia is an incredible achievement.
If indeed that was threatened, but it could,
If
as I
indeed
say,
it
it's
was.
probably Olenia Air Base.
Yeah. One question I want to ask you, because this makes me smile a little bit. First of all, it seems that Ukraine did not tell the US it was going to run these attacks.
Yeah, good
And
point. Didn't mention that. Yeah.
can you even imagine, I mean, quite literally them, to use the rather sort of crude parlance, shitting the bed when they found out about this. If it was Sullivan still in the Office of National Security, he probably just would have had a coronary and keeled over at this. Biden would not allow the attack. That's why they didn't tell him, I believe, they were invading Kursk. I think they did share it with some of their military liaisons, but they, whether Biden and others actually knew about the scale of Kursk is doubtful, perhaps.
The Moskva wasn't communicated, and the Kerch Bridge wasn't communicated as well. And actually, there are loads of analogs to the Kerch Bridge mission and this one, because it involved utilizing Russian people unwittingly, and it was also a very long time in the making. And I think they're absolutely right not to coordinate this with the Americans, because it would have got out. It would have got out.
Absolutely. If you want anything to work, if you want anything to remain secret, do not tell the Americans, and you certainly don't want them to offer objections to it. The other bit that makes me sort of smile a little bit is that when Zelensky was being berated in the Oval Office by Vance and Trump turning at him saying, "You don't have the cards," he would have known about the scale and timing of this operation. In his brain, he would have been thinking, "What are you talking about? I'm not playing cards, but if I was, I have a pretty decent hand here." Yeah, it's worth noting that, because it gives that whole scene a slightly interesting twist.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you can't trust the Americans at the moment, or anyone really. I think it's right to keep it to themselves, and also it communicates that they can do these things without help. They don't need. It's not about permission, but it's about capabilities, and they have the capability on their own to plan and execute an incredibly complex mission like this, and do it really, really well. So yeah, it's no surprise, but definitely good news that that they didn't communicate with anyone. There's just a few thanks to go through before I guess we wind up, because it's very late at your end of the world.
I'm leaving tomorrow, so I'm getting the transfer at the ungodly hour of 8 a.m. 4-hour travel to Chisinau, which is not probably how you pronounce that.
No, it's not, and I keep forgetting how to pronounce it. Benny Pie's corrected me, and it's not Chisinau, but that is the capital of Moldova. But it's not.
Because Ukrainians pronounce it different from Moldovans, who pronounce it differently from Romanians. So I'm not sure there is a
but as everyone knows, Jonathan, the British do it correctly. So Bombay is Bombay. It's not Mumbai. It's Bombay, right? So if you want to call it Chisinau, like, you're within your rights as a British imperialist.
We invented everything and all the maps and everything else of importance. I'm pretty sure my pronunciation bears no resemblance to how anybody else pronounced Chisinau. But anyway, that's where I'm going. And,
we invented time as well, Greenwich Mean Time. I mean, that anyway.
And then I'm flying to Luton. And the question is, will I actually notice the difference between Chisinau and Luton?
Well, I bloody hope so. I mean, I'm sure Chisinau's got a little bit more culture.
More going on.
Yeah, John Doe, this is one of yours. What's your response, I presume for you, Jonathan, to people who are already complaining, usually outside of Ukraine, about how the Russians will take revenge? Of course, it's capitulation to think like that. What's your message to such people? Good question.
It's not revenge. It cannot be retaliation. One, when a nation is defending itself and is not the aggressor. Secondly, that is not how Russians think. Some of the most vicious attacks they've made have not been in reaction. You just have to, this is not me just being a pro-Ukraine nut. You have to look at the pattern of attacks. And some of the most vicious attacks through the entire war are not necessarily timed when Ukraine does something victorious. Yes, the Russians have to lash out. I would use the word lash out rather than revenge, because it is an irrational and psychopathic tendency. And, revenge and retaliation are, I think, too rational and normalizing to define it that way. But they do lash out. But some of the most vicious attacks have taken place due to other things. That is anniversaries relating to Ukrainian agency and history. The anniversary of Kyiv, for instance. They lash out when they have made large prisoner swaps, because any concession given by Russia or forced upon Russia, in their mind, makes them less feared and makes them appear weak internally and externally. Therefore, they have to lash out with extreme psychopathic violence. So this is the wrong way strategically to think about it, as well as morally. It's not how Russians work. And indeed, if Ukraine just sat back and took the blows, that would provoke Russia into more extreme violence. So you have to think that actually they've got a different psychology. Their psychology is of a psychopathic coward, nonetheless, one who understands when there is force they can overcome and when force that will overcome them. And they are not irrational to the point of committing suicide. So when Ukraine strikes back hard, that is not an escalatory step. Again, you will see many, many people using the word escalation. One, that's not how Russians think. That's not how their strategic playbook works. But also morally, it's an appalling framing for the whole thing. To say that the offender, the victim, is escalating, they cannot escalate from their position. All they can do is defend. But it's wrong. The more Ukraine pushes back, the more Ukraine weakens Russia, actually in the long term, the less likely they are to be a victim of Russian aggression, not more.
Excellent. Pretty comprehensive answer there. So thank you, John Doe, on behalf of Jonathan, for your kindness there. Thank you for MDW for your support with 5 ATP Geopolitics memberships. Thank you very, very much indeed. So Daddy Jim, for you, Jonathan, and thank you on Jonathan's behalf. It's like watching the two Ronnies, but it's the two Johnnies. Remember the glasses, and Slava Ukraini. Who's Ronnie Corbett and who's Ronnie Barker? That's the question.
Oh boy, I think we're probably a hybrid of the two.
Yes,
we both like a little bit of wordplay, don't we?
The worm has turned. Yes, 4 candles and all the other references to the two Ronnies. Thank you very much, Daddy Jim. Very much appreciated. So just a few more thank yous. Kevin Forth, not Kevin Forst, but Kevin Forth. Thank you very much. Thanks for all you do. Truly appreciated. That's for you, Jonathan. One of yours. So big love to you. And another one of yours, Jonathan, Sugarwire from Norway, saying, any comments on Ukraine releasing the images of the smuggling containers? To me, it's like they burned that bridge and can't do it again. Benefit squeezes Russian logistics because of import inspections. That's a really good question. I talked about this. Sorry to answer first, Jonathan. But so when they do these things, I think they know full well that they're not going to be able to do them again. So this is with the Kerch Bridge. Like, the Russians are either going to find out, or it'll get out, or somehow, So I think that their idea is, right, we'll do this and then we'll make it a PR thing as well. So we get the PR victory. We'll show them how it's done, because actually it's pretty obvious how it's done, because people were recording these drones flying out of the top of these containers, right? So there is no hiding it. It's essentially they're found out. What you've got to make sure is that it's as impactful as possible while they do it. So the case in point here was that they did it to 5, or they tried to do it to 5 air bases. So there's no point doing this amazing mission that takes all of this preparation and do it to 1 air base. Let's do it to all of these air bases. We've got to go all in, go hard or go home. So they put all their what's that saying? They put all their things into eggs into one basket, and they went for it with this one. Sorry,
another phrase came to my mind, but probably not nearly as appropriate.
Knowing you, Jonathan, certainly not. So I think they have burned that bridge, so to speak, and great phrase there, because there's reference to Kirch here. They have burned that bridge, but they were always going to burn that bridge. And so you might as well then say, and this is how we did it. How cool are we? Check out this PR stunt. And actually then it feeds into the media cycle, and they get, because someone was saying actually it was JR, for one of my guys that helps me. He well, JR, we drove to Ukraine together, Jonathan. So JR was saying that actually Ukraine's been out of the news cycle recently because Gaza and Israel have been dominating the news in the Netherlands where he lives. And so actually today's news cycle was absolutely hammered by this activity in Ukraine, and Ukraine had done a really good job to captivate the audience to this is war fought on battlefields, in trenches and in the mud, but also in the information spaces. And being able to command those information spaces is very important for Ukraine, because if people start forgetting about Ukraine, then Putin wins. Putin needs people to get bored and tired. And so this is a kind of, look what we've done. We've still got some cards. Screw Russia. Look how successful this was. Look at the clear footage we've got. Look at how we did it. Oh, look at Malyuk looking over the schematics of how we did this. Look at these pictures of it was all perfectly communicated after the fact. So yeah, they burnt their bridges. They're always going to.
But the achievement is extraordinary, despite not everything going 100% according to plan. The achievement is remarkable. I'm rather hoping that I'll wake up in a few hours and the Kerch Bridge will no longer exist. But that's maybe not open all our Christmas presents all at once.
Yeah, goodness me. God, you're demanding. You're the sort of kid that opens their presents at Christmas. Is that it? Like, where's the rest of them?
Where's the rest of them? Yeah.
I've only got one Action Man. I want an Action Man. I want Eagle Eyes, and I want the tank, and I want. Sorry, I'm going back to 1980s here.
With me, it was Lego. So it was like if it wasn't all Lego, it wasn't Christmas. Beano, Lego,
Is that what it's like to live in the castle that you did? Is it the privilege?
That's
upbringing?
Right. Well, first of all, I'd get lost, in the wings, coming down to breakfast through the.
You were lucky. I mean, but let's do the 4 Yorkshiremen. Monty Python. You were lucky. I had to wake up half an hour before I went to bed, lick road clean with tongue, go down pit, work 25 hours a day for tuppence halfpenny. I had to pay to work there, and so on and so forth. If you see the 4 Yorkshiremen
to death. Yeah.
4 Yorkshiremen is one of the single greatest sketches ever done. Anyway, you mentioned earlier, just before we leave, I'm just trying to see if there's any other points of note before we do a runner and let you get some well-earned beauty sleep. That you mentioned this idea of the Russians claiming that the USSR never formally disintegrated or dissolved, and whatnot. Talaria, who I've interviewed a couple of times with regard to issues to do with the UN, has written a Substack piece saying the date the USSR legally ended, why Russia could not continue its UN memberships. Yet another reason the Russian Federation cannot possibly be in the United Nations, debunking Kremlin lies continued. So she's written a piece on that.
This is a good one, right? I mean, I agree with all of this in principle. And there was someone for a while sending me endless papers and arguments on exactly this point.
This would be Talaria.
It could be, and they got very, very angry that I didn't do, episodes on it and didn't take it seriously. And it's not that I don't agree that the argument is correct. I just don't believe anything will happen. I don't believe anyone will do anything about it. Unfortunately, they don't deserve to be in the UN, and certainly the UN Security Council is is a kind of axis of evil, essentially blocking any progress in the world. And the UN itself has become a zombie institution. But one, I don't think the UN really counts for anything anymore. So it'd be very much a symbolic gesture if Russia was kicked out rather than any real practical good. And secondly, it's not going to happen anyway. So I accept it in theory, but I'm sorry, it's a waste of my time to I'm not saying you're wasting my time, but I just this person who got really quite aggressive and angry with me for not, helping them push this line. I just don't see it, having any impact. Whereas the Russian central bank assets, improvements in drone warfare, Taurus, all these things have clear and demonstrable effects on saving Ukrainian lives. So that's kind of why I focus on those instead.
Well, I've linked that article in the description below if anyone is
Mm.
interested. Well, look, matey, I guess it's time to say goodnight to the audience, to the team. I really appreciate all the people who have helped out. Just a very quick run through: Kevin Force, Tremors, Surprise It's Us, The Weasel, Richard Bennett, Crawford Fulton King, John Panciotti, absolutely insanely generous as ever, John. BME, Tremors, John Doe, Daddy Jim, and this is both of us, by the way, MDW, Kevin Forth, Sugar Wire, and Ozzy T as a member, the Weasel. Thank you very much for all of your support. And the Weasel says just now, hoping Vlad gets better. Give a shout out, guys.
Yes,
Absolutely.
of course, Vlad. Very disturbing seeing the pictures of him very clearly physically incapacitated and in a lot of pain and discomfort.
Absolutely.
The last one I would say here as well,
Yeah.
John, just this is my last word on this. I mean, some people have been saying, oh, right, you've got to be careful tonight. Again, this idea of retaliation. But again, we have to remember that if Russia is going to try and do any demonstrable lashing out, that's the phrase I would use, it takes sometimes days of physical logistics and planning to actually, get those drones prepped, get the operators prepped, get the systems in place, do the operational planning, physically then get into the launch places. It takes many days of planning to do that. So when people talk about Russia retaliating immediately, that's physically impossible. So whenever you see a large-scale drone attack, what you're looking at is days, if not weeks, if not months, of work leading up to that particular point, like the 400 launched on Kyiv. That doesn't happen instantaneously. It's huge amount of planning behind that. So when enemies see us often in the media and news, they link that to something that has only just happened. That is extraordinarily ignorant of the reality of how those operations are planned and executed.
Absolutely. Someone was asking, please link the 4 Yorkshiremen sketch. I've done that in the live stream, in the live thread. Go and check it out. Put the 4 Yorkshiremen in. The original one in black and white is there. It is just chef's kiss. They've done it the live at the Hollywood Bowl, wasn't it? When Monty Python did that, they've got it there too. But the original, it's chef's kiss. It's an absolute delight. Yes, thank you very much to all of the supporters out there. Awesome news today from Ukraine. Fingers crossed that the Polish election switches back the other way. I haven't heard anything since. There's nothing that's come out, although I think 1 o'clock our time is going to be key, which is about an hour and 10 minutes. So we'll keep an eye on that. Certainly I will on my channel. Tremors, if Ukraine strike was as successful as they all say, with what is Russia going to use to retaliate? And that's a really good question. It will be ballistic missiles. It will be drones. I was saying in my video previously that the next focus for Ukraine has to be Shahed manufacturing facilities. They've got to take them out. Because if you're receiving 472 Shahed drones on a nightly basis, as they did last night, and if that's sustainable, and remember that Zelensky said the other day they're looking at making 500 a day. The Russians, they're making 300 to 350 a day at the moment. That is unsustainable for the Ukrainians to continue to take. So they have to absolutely hit the manufacturing facilities big time. So there you go. Yeah, what they will strike back with will be whatever they damn well can, Oreshniks maybe. And it wouldn't surprise me if the Ukrainians are going to try and take out the launch area for the Oreshnik missile, which is this scare quotes new missile. It's not new, but one that has multiple warheads in it, and they used it on Dnipro a little bit previously, but without the warheads in it. So there's a bit of kind of shot across the Ukrainian bows. So I think you'll see sort of more of all the things they can, but they're far less able to fire cruise missiles, at least from these strategic bombers. Of course, the Black Sea Fleet is still somewhat able to fire cruise missiles from the Black Sea. So that is still operational to some degree out of Novorossiysk in the Black Sea. Anyway, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
No, that was absolutely fantastic. The only final thing was a lovely quote I only became aware of today, and that's going to be in the title of a thumbnail of a video I'm putting up tomorrow, which is an interview with the editor of Kyiv Post, who's a remarkable and highly entertaining gentleman. He pointed out that Putin's conjecture that Lenin created Ukraine, that it didn't exist until then, in fact doesn't really exist at all, is beautifully disproved by a quote from Voltaire in 1731, where I'm going to absolutely massacre the French language here. But he said, "Le croyant a toujours espéré être libre," which I think translates into Ukraine has always aspired to gain its liberty.
To be free.
Yes.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
1731.
There you go. Good. I was hoping I wouldn't embarrass myself with translation there, since I have a degree in French, but I don't think I can remember bloody any of it. So I'm glad that you threw a translation in. Well, thank you for that. A good quote and a good way to end this. Thank you very much to everyone who supports the channels, but more importantly to everyone who supports Ukraine, as we all do. Slava Ukraini.
Heroyam Slava, and this is, you've got to get your head around this one. Smert Varagam. Death to your enemies and the invaders.
Bastards, the lot of them. Take care, Jonathan, and take care, everyone else. Toodle pips.
Yes, bye.